This is kind of addicting once you realize that you can pay somebody to do a nice job on things that you really don't want to be spending your time doing. You're constantly going to be looking at what else can be either automated or outsourced. And that's sort of the fun part of building a business to me.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com.
It may not be obvious at first, but putting together a cold email campaign requires to handle a lot of moving parts. Just think of research, prospecting, copywriting, and reply handling, just to name a few. Could some of those parts be outsourced to someone else, saving you a couple of hours or even more each week? Think about what you could do with all those extra hours. If you're wondering if you should hire VA standing for virtual assistant, but you're not sure where to start, I think this cast is really for you. We'll cover the strategies and tactics on which part of cold emailing to outsource first, where to find the best VA online, and how to effortlessly hire your first one. Today, we're going to talk about the tips and tricks on hiring your first VA for cold email.
That's right. So if you find yourself with an up and running cold email campaign, the next project to tackle is how to outsource a little bit of the tedious tasks so that you can scale up and put more energy into the high value activities.
Jack, tell me why I would want to actually outsource any of that.
So there's some activities that go into putting together a cold email campaign. Some of the activities are very valuable, such as deciding what email copy to write, maybe deciding which segment you should go after. And other activities are less valuable, meaning you probably shouldn't be doing this on a day-to-day basis. For example, cleaning your list. So going through a long spreadsheet, making sure all the first names are cleaned up and ready to go into a merge tag, or maybe even slightly more advanced things like web research that requires lots of time that maybe somebody else could step in and help you out with so that you could spend more time on the activities that really make a difference in your ROI.
A quick question, actually. Wouldn't a VA be actually replaced by scraping or automation and stuff like that? So would I still need a VA even if I find like a tool that does everything kind of thing?
You or somebody else will have to put their eyeballs on the output of a program before it's sent out, because programs, even the best ones today, still mess up, still drop in text that doesn't quite fit in with your email templates. I'm a bit of a perfectionist in this regard. I want a human being with native English skills to be able to read through everything, even if it's first generated by a scraper. In fact, that's a really good idea to have your VA get a little assistance from a scraping tool. And then maybe they just need to go in and clean it up, so to speak. It'll save a bunch of time. But maybe we can talk a bit more about this when we go into what should your VA actually help you with when you decide to hire your first virtual assistant.
Okay, love it. So where do we go from here?
To begin, before you start looking for virtual assistants, you need to decide, what do you need help with? That's first and foremost. That's going to tell you what kind of person you need to hire. That can tell you what skill sets they need to have. So that's first and foremost. And for me, I'm answering this question with a bit of the 80-20 principle in mind, where it's what activity is taking up, let's say, 80% of my time, but only accounts for 20% of the results. This is the low end of the value spectrum here, and the first thing that should be outsourced with your brand new VA.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples of things like that?
If, let's say, you've got a custom intro sentence, which, as we've talked about on the cast, is a really good idea for deliverability and for increasing reply rates. But in order to generate a personal custom intro sentence, you've got to do some digging on the company or the individual reaching out to. And that takes time, especially if you've got a couple hundred prospects on your list. But not to worry, this is something where someone can step in and, given a set of instructions to follow, they can actually go ahead and create that custom intro sentence for you. And right there, they may have just saved you 20 hours per week while ensuring that you've got great deliverability and really good reply rates. And imagine, this is sort of the whole point, of doing this cast is imagine what you could do if you had an extra 20 hours a week that you could use to go find some new clients or, more work, so to speak, with your cold email campaign.
That's pretty scary, actually, to think that a VA can actually come up with some personalization. I would tend to think that this is some sort of like imagination being at play here. So my question here would be, at what stage do you decide, okay, this is requiring too much creativity, too much thinking, imagination to be able to have a VA, as opposed to, someone that is a bit more vested and some, different level of skills?
Yeah.
Where do you aim for and how do you actually decide that?
Okay, so you want to know, where do you draw the line between hiring, let's say, a VA who can help you with basic stuff and a more advanced, maybe almost a consulting type that can really do some heavy lifting for you?
Yeah, spot on.
Okay, so for this particular cast, since we're talking about hiring your first VA, I'm looking at the easy stuff that takes up a good chunk of your work week. And this should be able to be passed off to somebody who may not be an expert in the space or a consulting level employee for you. The idea here is just to win you back 5 to 20 hours per week that has suddenly become freed up so that you can put that back into stuff that really matters, which the higher level stuff, which could be sales calls where you close new clients, thinking about approaching a new market, or maybe even repositioning your product so that you can repackage it and sell it to a brand new group of customers.
All right. So typical example that I can think of would be creating a spreadsheet, cleaning a list, uploading your list in QuickMail, for example, checking some stats, filling reports for clients, all those things that are like a bit manual, but kind of like can come with a sort of like set of instruction, a manual that clearly state all the steps without necessarily requiring too much creativity or thinking.
I think you just nailed it there. If you can create a process for it, steps 1 through 8, write it all down and hand it off to most anybody. Eventually you need to outsource that because you should not, as the CEO or the person in charge of sales, you should not be doing tasks that can easily be handed off. Instead, keep moving towards the higher level stuff. One other thing I'll add, any task that you can create a process for and that takes up a lot of your time is what you should hand off to your first VA. So if you're not exactly sure what particular task, maybe you're listening, you're saying, okay, Jack, well, I'm not actually using intro merge tags. What should my first thing be to hand off to my VA? Just as you go through your cold email work, just sort of take notes and say, okay, 3 hours doing list cleanup, 10 hours doing list building. And you'll start to see, wow, if I just had someone help me with this list building part, I could save 10 hours. That's huge. But my guess is if you're listening and you've already got a up and running cold email campaign, you probably can tell me in 1 second, the biggest headache, something that you would just love to get rid of and just still have done for you. My guess, it has something to do with spreadsheets, but that's just me personally. And if
everything has to do with spreadsheets anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So for me personally, a couple activities that I'm really happy that I've got some help with. Number one, with regards to spreadsheets, I've got some help with list building, but Jeremy, like you mentioned earlier, my VA for list building takes over after some sort of a scraper has been run. So they have something to work with. They're not starting from scratch here. And if you aren't sure what we're talking about when we say the word scraping, or you're interested in learning more about maybe using robots to help you list build, check out episode 93 where we talk about scraping. Okay, so another thing that I like having help with is like I mentioned, list cleanup, going through the names and the merge tags and just making sure those are ready to be dropped into the email template and they'll look beautiful. Also, shifting gears away from spreadsheets, I have a team helping me with reply tagging. So they're not necessarily, especially in the beginning when you're hiring your first VA, they're not going to be replying for you and actually doing sales follow-ups and this and that. But it's very nice to have them tag the replies that you're getting so your stats are accurate. And also having a team in place that can check an inbox a couple times a day to look for positive replies that need to be followed up on immediately is really handy if you aren't very good with dealing with rejection. You can just outsource that and have your team basically comb through the leads in your outbound inbox and have those forward to you. So basically you're just seeing the good stuff all day long. So it's kind of a cool hack to use your VA to deal with rejection.
Yeah, I guess at this stage, a lot of people kind of understand the concept and the idea that we can outsource to, a virtual assistant. But a lot of people will have objections at this stage, like fear of letting go, or, it will take time to hire and train that person and so on. So I guess we're going to tackle that. But when we are saying, a clear set of instruction, is obviously not step one, reply to this person, step two, make the sale kind of thing. It's really instruction that people can follow, even though they don't have any background in any of what you're doing. And that's possible. I did it. Obviously, Jack does it. And the rest of the cast, we're probably going to dive into how do you actually execute on that? Where do I find my virtual assistant? And how can I actually hire them without too much problems or pitfalls to avoid? So in the end, you'll feel confident that after this cast, you can go ahead and then say, okay, well, I can do that. And hopefully get some hours back on your work quick.
And just a caveat here, this is kind of addicting once you realize that you can pay somebody to do a nice job on things that you really don't want to be spending your time doing, especially when there's bigger fish to fry, so to speak. You're constantly going to be looking at what else can be either automated or outsourced. And that's sort of the fun part of building a business to me. Let's sort of go into the ground floor here, which is setting up processes. You take a very specific task. And I mean very specific, just what Jeremy said. You don't just say step one, reply, step two, sign up.
Close the sale.
Close sale, exactly. What you're going to do instead is just pick a very narrow task that takes up a lot of your time and open up a new Google document, just put number one and step one and just write it out with excruciating detail so that if you just emailed this to a friend, they would be able to take over if you became sick or something. So it should be like very detailed, almost insultingly detailed, meaning you break steps down so much that there's no confusion in how to get the work done. So I use a lot of screenshots, and for certain tasks, I'll have item 1A, item 1B, item 1C. So like certain if then statements in case there's some variability in the work. So really just if you looked at one of my processes, the idea, if I've done it right, is a fifth grader could do this just as well as a college grad, just because everything is painstakingly written out in lots of detail.
Yeah, and if you're not that type of person, and I know I'm not, for example, then a video actually works quite well. Like you actually do perform the task that the person should execute and speak, give instruction as you perform the task. So here I'm clicking on this button. Then, it goes to this page, then I enter this thing, and so on and so on. And actually works pretty well, too, for people who actually don't like to write stuff.
Now, we're going to move on from building out your process, but for more, check out eMyth. It's a fabulous book that really uses the McDonald's franchise story that shows you how you can apply processes to lots of aspects of the business. Great read. Okay, so...
Yeah, and I hope your call email will be better than their burgers, but, they're making a fortune, so, who cares, right? Okay, let's move on.
That's true. All right, so here we have either a video or a Google Doc with the steps that you're going to give your VA. Now, it's important to do this first before you hire them because I'm going to use this as part of my kind of interview process. So I'm going to interview a couple of virtual assistants that meet criteria, and just maybe I'll have a brief conversation with them to make sure that they are excellent English speakers and that I would like to work with this person, but I'll keep it very short, and I'm going to send them the instructions that are in this document and or video. And I'm going to do that with all of the people that I hire and really just use some math to figure out which one's the most efficient, just output versus dollars spent, and that'll get you the best person to work for long term.
I have a slightly different tangent when it comes to actually vetting people. So I'm going to give you my full process on how to hire a VA super easily. And I'm even going to tell you actually where to find them. Let's start with how you hire them. So one thing I will do is I will put like a job spec that obviously touches on all the things that they will need to do. Like if they need to, fill spreadsheet, then I will tell them like, hey, they need to be comfortable with Google Suite and things like that. But in my job spec, I will mention certain keywords and I will say the magic word is, I don't know, mushroom, for example, or cold email, whatever. And I will give them specific instruction on how to apply. Like the subject of your email should be that magic word. And most people just say like, or the magic word is thank you or please or things like that. And it's like, okay, well, you just didn't read. So if you can't read my instruction on my job spec, what are the chances you're going to do it at work?
Beautiful. No, that's like an automatic filter then.
Right. So already, you got plenty of stuff away. That's all good. But then the next thing that you do is you ask them to shoot a 30-second to 1 minute top video just presenting themselves. And that way, that will give you a very quick way of knowing how good their English is. That way, you don't have to get on a call with them, schedule a call, go at the right time, having a video call, and then just tell them, sorry, your English is shit. So that way, that's easier.
Yeah, no, that's way better. I'm going to steal that one. I like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing you're going to do once you do that, and actually, you can reverse the order. So it really depends on who is applying and what for. But what you can do next is you shoot a small video and then you move into paid work. And the paid work is actually pretty easy. You just give your video of what people should be doing and you just ask them, go ahead. And like Jack said, you just look at how much they actually produce versus how much you pay them. And if you do that with 5-4, then you're usually going to find one that is actually pretty good and you want to keep in your team.
And keep in mind, it may actually work out that somebody with a higher hourly rate will be a better investment, so to speak, just because they're more efficient. They're, I don't know, maybe faster.
Absolutely.
More of an expert. So don't automatically think that a higher hourly rate will cost you more money for the work.
That's very true. And also sometimes higher one will also use more their brain and sometimes find more efficient way of doing things. But that's rare usually because that's not really what we are aiming for when we're filtering people out.
But that's something you should be looking for at the next level, which may be something like a consultant, whether it's one time or someone that you bring on board for a more hands-on role. Hopefully the work that you explain to them, like you said, they'll be able to either see a problem with it or a much faster way or just a completely other thing you didn't think about, which is basically the whole reason you're bringing them on board, to take advantage of someone else's opinion and expertise. So...
No. I just take someone on board so they can do the work.
Yeah, true. Okay, so we mentioned making videos, having them share that they got the magic word so that we don't have to waste time on people who didn't read the job posting. But where are we finding these people? Is it Upwork.com is the best source?
Yeah, so this is a very popular one, and it's probably where you're getting them from, right, Jack?
Yeah, personally, yeah, big fan. Like Upwork.
So Upwork.com is a very big platform. A lot of people are on this platform, and you'll definitely find someone. Now, I prefer to some extent when I'm looking at someone who needs to be a bit more vested and a bit more of a full member of the team, I should say. I will definitely try something like onlinejobs.ph for Filipinos.
Ah, okay.
I found Filipinos actually pretty good for the type of work that I need. Their English is usually really good. They do have really good level of education for English. And they're sort of used to this type of work in their society. A lot of people are doing that. So I find them pretty good. There are some caveats with the culture, like every culture. I personally found that Indian workers actually didn't work that great, mainly because it's very rude for them to say no when we ask them, did you understand? So it really requires you to actually ask them okay, what did you understand? And then having them telling you things. So there's caveat that you have to be aware with the culture. And I find Filipinos very easy for my style to work with and really produce a high level of work that I'm happy with.
I got to agree with that one there.
By the way, I find my rockstar support guide through onlinejobs.ph and
cool.
Some of my VAs through upwork.com. So pick and choose. Give it a go.
I've got one other note here to throw out, and it's not so much for hiring your first VA, but it's something to keep in mind. If you find that you've managed to find a really good VA, but Maybe they don't give you the 100% error-proof English grammar that you're looking for. Something to consider, you may have maybe somebody at the $25 an hour range who's maybe a US or Canadian citizen. Maybe they become your proofreader and you pay them just a couple hours a week to go through everything right before they upload stuff to QuickMail, for example. And that way it's sort of a workaround having someone do the bulk of the work at a more affordable rate, but just a set of expert eyes that can take care of it right before it gets sent out.
Dude, that's awesome. And I would even actually consider the performance of the first one based on the time I'm going to have to pay the second one.
Exactly.
So if the proofreader is costing me a fortune, it's because the first one is actually not performing well enough and the proofreader has to change too many things. Or it's just a slacker,
Yeah, or maybe they're spending a lot of time doing web research, which, if that's the case, then maybe their hourly rate should be reflective of kind of the real role here. Any other comments for somebody who's saying, okay, I'm ready to have my cold email campaign get sort of helped out by my first VA?
I'll say one last thing, actually. I think it's Bill Gates who said something along the lines that automating a bad process is kind of like only going to make things exponentially bad and not better. So just be mindful that, like Jack said, think of your process first before going and hiring people and saying, I'll figure things out on the go. So have a clear picture of what you want to do and execute it yourself, execute it yourself and then think like, it's a good process. It just would save me time if someone else do some part of it. And I think then you got a winner.
Well said. Great cast, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay, lots covered here. Let's break down what you need to know to hire your first cold email VA. First, decide what you need before looking for candidates. Start by outsourcing the single task that's taking up the majority of your time and can be explained in a step-by-step manual or video. Next, on freelancing sites like Upwork or onlinejobs.ph, use a magic word in your job posting to make sure candidates have read your description before spending time interviewing them. Hire 3 to 5 VAs for a trial project and share your instructions with each to determine who's the best fit for your team. And finally, look at output versus dollars spent to find your first VA.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
So they can send awesome emails.
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.